What's up, everybody? Welcome to Draft Chaff. This is episode number 126. My name is Zach. I'm one of your hosts, and joining me, as per usual, Ben Fisher. What's up, dude?
Not too much, although I gotta say, you left me alone on Arena for a little too long, and I accidentally blew a bunch of gems on these. Well, you can see them.
Yeah, they're beautiful lands. You got the SpaceX. That's pretty sweet.
Oh, I saw that they had the Spacek plains. These are the new unset lands. I just couldn't resist, and then I kind of accidentally bought all the shocks too.
So, yeah, accidentally, sure.
Well, okay, let's just say after my my decent run at qualifier weekend and at the Arena Open, I had a little bit of excess gems, so you got to put those things somewhere. You can't take it with you.
That's true. Well, this week we're going into our live draft. This is actually going to be a live recording of our very first Brothers War draft. It's opening day, released on Arena earlier today, and we're just going to give it a go. You're going to watch us bumble around, stumble over picks, and we're going to try to do our best to talk through everything we need to think through in order to do a good job here with these picks. It is a premier draft, so we are going to have to do this with a timer, but we'll get through it.
We're also recording the full video for this, so you'll be able to watch along if you want. And we're going to add a new segment to our live draft show where we roast our previous live draft from last time. So I have our DMU one queued up, ready to look at after this.
All right. Before we get into all of that, of course, our usual housekeeping. Check out the Discord if you're not already in it. It's the best place to be to keep up with us, chat with the rest of the Chaff community, and discuss picks, post your trophies. We always really love to see the race to the first trophy on a new set. So, maybe that's already happened by the time this episode releases, but if not, get your trophies posted in the trophy channel. The link to that is in the episode description as well as on our Twitter page. And if you'd like to support the show directly, you can do so on Patreon at patreon.com/draftchaffpod. Huge thanks to all of our patrons who continue to support us each and every week. You all rock, and we really appreciate the support that you've provided us. Big shout out to our latest patron, Dan. Welcome aboard. Thanks for your support. We really appreciate you as well. Perks over there include things like our Draft Doctor series, stickers, show notes, our pre-show recordings, as well as our Draft Chaff hero cards signed and sent right to your door. Again, you can check that out at patreon.com/draftchaffpod.
Now I got to think of what I'm going to do to a wingmantle chaplain to send to Dan. I mean, not that I usually make some light edits, nothing that would make it unplayable, but maybe like a little mustache here or there or something. I don't know. I'll think of something for the chaplain.
We're going to skip our crack draft type thing this week because we have an entire draft to get through. So right on to our Teferi Tybalt. This is our Roses and Thorns style of segment where Ben and I share a high and a low from the past week. What's up, Ben?
Not too much. Had a good long weekend. It was teacher convention here in New Jersey. And, well, some teachers go to it, but most just enjoy a 4-day weekend. So that was kind of fun. Spent a lot of time laying around doing nothing. Always good. And next week, there's another 4-day weekend because, it's Thanksgiving. So that'll be nice. Now, this kind of leads right into my Tybalt, which is the fact that this is a full week. So it's kind of like a full week surrounded by 2 to 3 day weeks. And that's annoying. But anywho, it was a bit of a bum missing pre-release as well. It's been a long time since we missed pre-release, but we both had busy weekends full of fun stuff. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, it happens. Sad to miss one, but I think if I had to miss one in the last probably 4 or 5 sets, I'm glad it was this one from what it looks like.
Harsh criticism right off the bat.
I haven't played it yet, so I could totally eat those words at some point, but just looking at the set, it's one of the least excited I've been over recent sets anyway. All right, so my Teferi is that obviously the holidays are coming up, Thanksgiving here in the U.S., and that's always great. It's one of my favorite holidays, favorite times of year as well. Lots of good food going around. We've got Friendsgivings coming up, just hanging out with friends and family. And I've got a little bit of travel plans as well mixed in there. So I'm really excited for this extra time. That said, my Tybalt is that I've got some deadlines work-wise coming up, and they bump right up against Thanksgiving. So if I can't really put the pedal to the metal this week, I'm going to have to do some really push it next week, and probably not take as many days off as I was hoping to, but such is life. So hopefully I'll still have plenty of time and mental bandwidth to draft after stuffing my face full of turkey and stuffing and mashed potatoes and stuff on Thursday.
Yeah, and hopefully we can get together and maybe grab some pre-release kits from our local game store. Oh, that's actually a great segue into our listener question of the week, which comes from Dorrigan. What makes a good local game store in your opinion?
That's a great question. One that we've never really gotten before. So thanks for that. I think this depends on your use cases for an LGS. I think if you were to generalize this, I'd say a good LGS needs space. It needs good employees. And by that, I mean nice people who are willing to help new folks to new games, teach people how to play games, just, I guess, more compassionate. I've been to some LGSs that have some really, really mean people working at them, and it's just not a good experience. And probably it doesn't hurt to have access to food and drinks at the LGS as well. Nothing crazy. I'm not asking for a full kitchen or anything, but just snacks would be, that's always a good time. And the ability to kind of just come in and sit down and play something that's not actually an event at the place is usually good too.
So I have some priorities that I see up there. Prize support. I like an LGS with solid prize support. Not that I always win, but when I do, I like to walk away with something that feels worth it, right? So maybe giving you the option to get store credit instead of prize packs, for example. Proximity, I think, is pretty important, which might not be an objective measure, but I mean, an okay LGS that's 5 minutes away, you're probably going to go to that a lot more often than a good LGS that's an hour away, right?
Yeah, that's fair. I think having something close is huge. I would say though that if it was a bad LGS that's 5 minutes away, I'm probably still taking that hour drive. But that depends how frequently I'm going to the LGS as well.
So I think the community is also pretty important. I almost want to say the energy or the vibe of the people that play there. If you're playing with a bunch of folks that are not there to have fun and you're there to have fun, it's not going to be a good experience, right? And that also goes with LGSs that offer a lot of options to play. If they have their competitive modern events, but then they also have F&Ms and a whole bunch of other stuff, then there's a good balance and everyone finds what they're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically what I was about to say. I think there's a time and place for the spikiness, right? But you want your LGS to have sort of a spectrum of, I don't know what the phrase is, a spectrum of competitiveness, I guess. Where you have those events that are just for people who want to have a good time, and then there are those events with the really good prize support that are more competitive.
So I've got to say, I love our LGS setup, especially in our area, especially the ones that we've been to a lot. We've made a lot of friends at our LGSs. We've bumped into some listeners at LGSs. Nerdvana in South Jersey will always be near and dear because that's kind of our home base LGS. Shout out to Nerdvana Games and Comics, who hopefully we'll get to visit sometime over Thanksgiving to maybe play some Brothers War. Shout out to the Bearded Dragon Games in Bernardsville, New Jersey. They're honestly where I go if I want to play competitively. If I'm looking to play a modern event or something, and I know I want to go against the best of the best, I know I can find them there. And shout out to the Uncommons in New York City, because I love the energy of that store. It's a really fun experience going in. It's not too far from either of us, all things considered. And it's in the city, so you can go get good food on the way in or out. And the store itself is wonderful. It's got a lot of fun decorations, and it's well designed, and it's a more relaxed environment than I would say Bearded, or honestly maybe Nirvana is probably about the same level of relaxed, but it's a good energy there.
Yeah, they also do all their pre-releases at really weird hours. So if you can't make a typical pre-release, you've got a 3 p.m. on a Friday. It's pretty.
How do they
even
good. Swing that? But I like it because within all of our LGSs across the entire state, we kind of have options. I know this doesn't matter too much to people that aren't in Jersey, but if you ever find yourself in New Jersey, maybe for GP Atlantic City, or there's Magic Fest Philly coming up, If you're going to Magic Fest Philly, whatever that thing is called, MagicCon Philly, I don't even know. I mean, if you want to drive 45 minutes away, hit up Nirvana because they're great.
All right. So before we move on to our live draft, definitely drop some questions about Bro into our Discord channel for listener questions. We'd love to hear them. Well, we're getting this draft kicked off, and what are we hoping to open here?
Honestly, just seeing Cityscape Leveler as the background of the draft thing, that would be a sweet one to open. So just so everyone knows, this is going to be best of 3 draft. Not to toot my own horn, but toot. I'm in the high hundreds currently ranked. So I don't want to mess that up with my very first Brothers War draft. We'll wait like 2 or 3 drafts in. I want to get a handle on the format before I really tank that out of the top 1,000. All right, the table's ready. Let's see if everyone actually queues up. We're waiting on 2 here. I don't know. It'd be cool to open a command. I feel like those are going to be the bread and butter rares of the set, and I want to get some experience with them. I saw Reed Duke posted a draft where he had Titania's command, and 6 mana, make 2/2 bears, and then put 2 counters on everything you control. Just nuts.
Especially in a set like this that cares a lot about tokens.
Honestly, I just don't want a dud. I will take anything that isn't a dud. I want a sweet first draft here. And it looks like we're about to fire our first. Well, we have the Temporal Anchor, and that is certainly sweet. It's 3 blue. It's a legendary artifact. It's a rare. Beginning of your upkeep, scry 2. Whenever you choose to put 1 or more cards in the bottom of your library while scrying, exile that many cards from the bottom of your library. And during your turn, you may play cards exiled with a Temporal Anchor. So this functionally reads, you get to cast the extra 2 cards you scry every turn. You get to look at the top 3 and play as many as you can. Now, it's not free casting, but this is sick card advantage, right?
Yeah. What else we have in the pack here?
We have a Keeper of the Cadence. That's 5 mana, 2/5. You can pay 3 to put something on the bottom of a library. There's Bushwhack, the sick removal spell, or Land Tutor. There's a Mask of the Jadecrafter. That's the artifact with Unearth that can make an XX Golem. We have one of those weird, I forget what they're called, like not masterpieces, but we have a Millstone. And then after that, there is an Overwhelming Remorse in the pack, which is just top tier removal. There's a Koilos Rock. Who am I kidding? I'm taking the rare. I don't know if this is any good or not, but I have to. Now we got past a rare as well. Stasis Coffin, 3 mana, legendary artifact. You can pay 2, tap, exile it. You gain protection from everything until the end of turn. I see why they passed this. So we were past the Gurgling Anointer, which we talked about last show. It seemed great. And Monastery Swiftspear. Geez, Swiftfoot Boots is in the set. What?
Yeah, that's one of those other non-masterpiece things. I forget what they called them as well, but so what seems to be the most powerful card in this pack just in a vacuum? Maybe the Gurgling Anointer. I want to call it the Gurgling Angler.
Yeah, there is an Energy Refractor in this pack, which I think is going to be a solid, like, smoother card in this set. Swiftspear is up there, but it's not necessarily great with the Temporal Anchor. I feel like Gurgling Anointer would be good, although it doesn't combo. Temporal Anchor doesn't draw the cards.
Yeah, I'm not sure anything in this pack combos. I would probably just take the most powerful card, ignoring the Temporal Anchor.
I think so. This could be totally off.
Drop in the pack.
Oh, that's true. There's a supply drop. There's also a Rust Goliath, which is massive. But let's take the Anointer. I mean, it seems like we're going to get past some black cards. Speaking of which, we were past another rare. Another one that we're not going to take. Fateful Handoff. That's the 4 mana sorcery. Draw cards equal to the mana value of target artifact or creature you control, and opponent gains control of that permanent. So it does kind of work well with Unearth. So you can like unearth something, draw 4, and then give it to someone else. But there's also No One Left Behind, which is a 5 mana reanimate spell. There's a Heavyweight Demolisher. That's the Menace construct with Unearth for 1 million. Ivory Tower. What is that? Beginning of your upkeep, you gain X life for X number of cards. Nope.
The Airlift Chaplain's pretty solid. There's a Gix Caress.
There is a third path Savant,
which I love. If we could end up in blue-green, which would be the deck that has the mana to cast something like the Temporal Anchor, the third path Savant's going to be great.
I feel like No One Left Behind seems really strong with some of these cards. I feel like we're getting past black stuff. There's a Gix's Caress and Emergency Weld. I want to spec on the No One Left Behind. There's just no solid blue cards. Although here's a Defabricate. Counter target artifact or enchantment spell, or counter target act. Oh, this isn't I thought this is the common one. That's not quite as good as I want it to be. Alloy Animist is an uncommon in this pack too. It's the one that can animate stuff into 4/4s. Pristine Talisman, that's kind of cool. There is a Desynchronize, that's the blue 5-mana removal spell. There's a Killzone Acrobat, Mind Worker, Coastal Bulwark. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not super stoked on any of these cards.
So there actually might be like a big mana fog deck. There's a Fog of War in this pack as well. I don't know what I'm on. Maybe the Archaeologist.
Yeah, so Philology Archaeologist can put a non-creature, non-land card into my hands. That can go get No One Left Behind or the Temporal Anchor. I mean, we're still waffling here a little bit, but Temporal Anchor is the strongest card in our pool, I think. So
probably Pristine Talisman may have actually been the pick too. That card could be pretty solid in this set.
Ooh, there's a Weakstone Subjugation in this pack, along with an Elsewhere Flask. That's a fun one. ETB, draw a card, sack it. Lands you control become that type until end of turn. I guess that can help fix the cast some of the weird mythics, but there's also a Keeper of the Cadence. That's the 5-mana 2/5. There's a Disfigure in this pack. Gotta just slam Disfigure, right?
I think so. I think we're probably not looking to play the Temporal Anchor. There's a chance we end up in blue-black, and that's what we're doing, but I'm not a fan of the blue-black Vector in this set from what I've seen of it, so I would be hoping not to play that one.
But so far, we have a Gurgling Anointer and a No One Left Behind. And honestly, Disfigure, only a removal spell in the pack, seems good.
What I'm seeing so far is potentially getting into a black-white shell that could look pretty solid, or even maybe a black-red shell that does some sack stuff.
Well, here's a cool one. Battlefield Butcher. 3-mana 1/4, and you can tap to have each opponent lose 2 life, and it costs 1 less for each creature card in your graveyard. It usually costs 5, but you can get that down to 0. I mean, this seems to pair pretty well with the slower defensive black Vector we have here. There is a Moment of Defiance, the 3-mana trick that gives 2/1 in lifelink and draws a card. Hopefully we can get one copy of this. There was another one in another pack too. Other cards in this pack, there's a Phalanx Vanguard, an Energy Refractor. This could be the deck where we want 1 or 2 of those to trigger our Gurgling Anointer. But I think I want to take this Butcher. It just seems really strong.
Yep, makes sense to me.
So we got Mishra, Excavation Prodigy in this pack. I don't love this one, and that's the only uncommon left. There's a bunch of commons in here that seem solid. There's a Scatter Ray in blue that's functionally an Essence Scatter. Koilos Rock. There's a Carrion Locust, but that just seems pretty medium playable. There's a Recommission in white. That's kind of cool with our Gurgling Anointer and our Battlefield Butcher.
Yeah, I think this is a relatively pivotal pick, even though all these cards seem pretty mediocre. Because we kind of are starting to shape what vector we're heading toward. I kind of like the Recommission here.
Yeah, I do too. It's possible.
Scatter Ray is also pretty good, but
yeah, I do see a bit of a graveyard vector emerging within this deck, like a graveyard draw 2 thing within black white.
Astral Cornucopia is printed in the set.
Astral Cornucopia, man. I'm glad these are a surprise because this is funny, and they all have these gorgeous borders. Enters the X charge counters on. I mean, it's just a big rock. I don't think we want this.
No, it's not great in limited, but
so there's a Moment of Defiance. There's also a Warlords Elite, the 3-mana 4/4 that I really like. But there's also a Moment of Defiance. I feel like we're going to be able to get a moment back, but this could help us like dip into white a little bit in case we open like a bomb white rare next pack. We're probably playing black and then maybe blue or white. So we have our wheel pack now. We got back Keeper of the Cadence. The Millstone, along with a Yoshin Medic, a Koilos Rock, Dredging Claw, Sentinel Stalwart, which seems really bad, and a Coastal Bulwark. I kind of like the Yoshin Medic. This is a 3-mana 1/4 soldier. I mean, if you get this back with Recommission, that's a 2/5 lifelink. That's no joke.
Yeah, I like it. I'm starting to really try to pay attention to some of these 2, like the 3-mana or less things. It looks like we might be in the less than 3 deck.
Yeah, and in that case, we actually will want to pick up some things that cost, well, 1 and 2 to hope to curve into the Warlords Elite. Although this pack, I think we're going to take an Energy Refractor. We wield the Stasis Coffin, but I'm not looking to gem draft this early. We wield Monastery Swiftspear, but we're really far away from it. There's a Lorenz
Red
Escape.
Hasn't been open.
Yeah, Lorenz Escape. I mean, this doesn't help you win combat, so it's not great. I'm just going to take
You want the Refractor over the first supply drop there?
I think so, yeah. Because the other one, it's just awfully expensive. Energy Refractor could help us fix mana too. It just stays around.
Fair.
So we actually got a lot of black stuff back. We got an Emergency Weld and a Moment of Defiance and a Gix's Caress, which is worse. We also wield the Ivory Tower. I think it's between Moment and Emergency Weld. I feel like the first Emergency Weld is better.
Yeah, I agree.
Last couple
Kills
things
on Acrobat's a great
here.
card to pick up.
Yeah,
it's not so good in the black-white deck, but it's a solid playable that if we end up, for some reason, do end up in red, it's one that we'll be happy to have.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to pick up another Energy Refractor here over some blue stuff. There's a Bitter Reunion and a Mishra's Onslaught in the last two. I'll take the Bitter Reunion and toss it right in the sideboard. And a Union of the Third Path, which I guess your Turbo Fog deck.
I think it's a thing. I think it's actually a thing.
Okay, well, it looks like Arena really wants us to play some kind of blue exile thing because we opened Hercule Master Wizard. So that's 3 mana for a 2/4. Beginning of your end step, if you've cast a non-creature spell this turn, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. For each card type among non-creature spells you've cast this turn, you may put a card of that type among the revealed cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom. So this functionally lets you, whatever card types you've cast this turn, you get another one at the end of the turn. There's also a Skyfisher Spider, the black-green signpost. There's a Slagstone Refinery, which seems really bad. Springleaf Drum.
Springleaf Drum actually feels really good in this set, just with all the tokens floating around.
Yeah, honestly, nothing good in white. I almost want to take Hercule just as a hedge in case we wind up back in blue-black.
Yeah, there aren't really any good black cards in this pack either.
Yeah,
I don't see us in blue-black, but it's possible that we do.
And yeah, maybe blue is super open this direction.
Yeah, could be.
Well, I guess green's going to be open this direction. There's a Gwenna Eyes of Gaia we got past. 3 mana, 2/3, taps to add 2 mana only to cast creature spells. When if you cast a creature with power 5 or greater, put a 1/1 counter on her and untap it. There's also a there's a Door to Nothingness. I mean, what's going on in this pack? I mean, is Door to Nothingness? It can't work, right?
I think it might be able to work in this set.
10 mana. Target player loses the game.
Oh, so here's the thing. It's colored. Yeah, it's colored mana, so the Power Stones don't actually help.
That seems impossible. Unless you have a bunch of Energy Refract.
Yeah, but then it's going to cost you like 15 mana instead of 10. Anyway,
there's nothing really in this. Oh, there's an Overwhelming Remorse, and we're certainly playing black. I almost convinced myself to take Door to Nothingness. Why take a thing that can kill a creature when you could take a thing that can kill a player?
Well, one you can cast, the other you can't activate.
All right. So I took the Overwhelming Remorse. Now, we actually have some good white cards getting passed to us, which we did kind of expect. There's a Combat Thresher. That's a 7 mana 3/3, double strike, ETB draw a card, and you can prototype it for just 2 and a white. That's kind of nuts,
That's
right?
a really good card, yeah.
There's also a Lauren Disciple of History, 4 mana 3/3, in 3 and a white, that is. When it or another legendary creature ETBs, return target artifact from your graveyard to your hand. There's a Mishra's Research Desk as well. But honestly, I want to try out this Thresher, dude. This thing looks sick.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work with the less than 3 thing. Like, it looks a little bit deceptive because its prototype is 3 mana value. But it's a solid card that we're going to be able to cast for 3 mana if we need to. And it's got an effect that, like, even as a 1/1, you're pretty happy to have.
Now, there's another No One Left Behind in this pack, and having 2 5-mana reanimate anythings, especially now after having just gotten a Combat Thresher, that can be strong, right? Because then we're looking to have the black self-mill vector along with 2 copies of reanimate anything. So we mill over a huge 7 or 8 or 9 mana prototype and then bring it back. I mean, that's a vector that interests me a lot.
That's also another great thing with the prototype cards. You can play them for the prototype cost. You don't mind trading them away. You can reanimate them later to get them bigger.
Well, can I interest you in a 3rd copy of No One Left Behind?
Yeah, I mean, let's see what else is in this pack. It doesn't look like there's a ton. There's another Yoshin Medic.
There's a Yoshin Frontliner. That's the little artifact creature. I mean, this one's pretty solid. This can beat in for a bunch, but I don't think we're that aggressive of a vector. There's a Ravenous Gigamole, 4 mana 2/3, mill 3, and then you can get a creature back or put a counter on it.
I like that. I think I actually like the Gigamole over the No One Left Behind, the 3rd No One Left Behind, because we have very few creatures in this deck, and we don't have anything to power the self-mill yet.
Very few so far, although Arena is actually telling me to take the Gigamole. Yeah, it seems
Also, it's called a
fine. I guess we'll
Gigamole.
take
Come
it.
on.
That's true. Seems cool. So we got a Suchi Cave Guard. It's an 8 mana 8/8 Vigilance Ward 8. And when it dies, float 8 mana. I mean, if this isn't what you want to reanimate, like, you don't really want to hard cast it. This doesn't have Prototype. It doesn't have Unearth. But I guess it's a good reanimation target. There's also another Ravenous Gigamole, which, I mean, it's such a boring pick.
There's an E-Wilds. That's not a terrible pick either. The only downside to taking the Suchi Cave Guard is that we don't really have ways to discard cards. So if you don't mill it, it's just going to be stuck in your hand because we're never really getting to 8 mana.
That's true. Let's play to our Vector. I took the Gigamole. So there's another Stasis Coffin. I guess we'll see a lot of those going around the set. There's a Reconstructed Thopter, 3 mana 2/1 flyer, and has Unearth for 2. That just seems like a good card by itself, right?
Yeah, especially it plays well with the less than 3 sub theme, so we can reanimate it with some of those cards. It unearths, so we could still do stuff with that. We don't really have any sack outlets, but if we ever did, that's another notch for the unearth thing. I think a 3 mana flyer here is just fine. 3 mana 2/1 flyer.
Yeah, sure. Why not? So there's some blue and black cards we might be interested. There's a Scatter Ray. It's the Essence Scatter lookalike. There's Gixian Soul Flare or Skull Flare. If at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 3 more cards in your graveyard, creature cards, you get a counter on it. And there's a Thraxiderm, which lets you sack stuff. I'm probably on the let's try the Scatter Ray. I mean, people are going to be tapping out a lot in this format. I feel like you could get someone with it.
Yeah, I'm just not convinced we're going to be playing blue, so I probably would have gone Skull Flare there, but
yeah, we're definitely a little torn between playing blue and white. We're definitely playing black. I mean, we have 2 energy refractors. Maybe we wind up with some of both, but triple blue for Temporal Anchor and double blue for Hercule. Oh, whoops. There's nothing in this pack anyway. Take a Goblin Firebomb.
Yeah, notably, we also have nothing that generates Power Stones, which feels weird. Looking at this set, I kind of expected every deck to have those without really trying, and so far, we haven't seen anything really that generates them. So that's something to keep an eye on early in this format here.
So there's an involuntary cooldown. Taps 2 things, put stun counters on them. Another recommission. There's a Disenchant in white. What are you thinking?
I like the Disenchant, but recommission seems pretty solid too, especially with that Thopter we picked up.
Yeah, we'll take it. I'm not totally sold that we're white, but there are no good blue or black cards in that pack anyway. We're kind of down to the dredges here. Bunch of red little junkers going around. I guess I'll take an Ashnod's Intervention in case we end up short on playables. Ooh, we got a Moment of Defiance back. There's a Deadly Riposte in white. Another Goblin Firebomb and a Conscripted Infantry. Feel like Moment of Defiance. We didn't pick one of these up yet. We want it for our Gurgling Anointer.
Yeah, that seems fine. I wasn't too thrilled with pack 2 here. This hasn't been really what we want to see.
Yeah,
here we've got a Machine Over Matter and a Yoshin Medic coming down to the dredges of this pack. I think you just take the Yoshin Medic.
Yep.
Move on with life.
Thran Power Suit and a Flagy Chain Dancer. Neither of these are going to make our deck. And our last card is a Conscripted Infantry, which is weird. I thought that card would be pretty solid. Now our last rare is Platoon Dispenser. It's a mythic. This is 5 mana 4/6. Yeah, I guess this might edge out our blue cards. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more creatures, draw a card. I mean, you can just put that in any deck, right?
Well, you're not done yet.
It does have 3 and a white to create a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token, and you can unearth it for 2 white. So that's pretty good. I mean, there's a Static Net, which is the really good white removal spell, kind of like a Prayer Binding, but better. Doesn't have flash, but it's just good. Another Monastery Swift Spear, a Sarenth Steel Seeker, Liquid Metal Coating. Oh, dude, you can Liquid Metal Coating disenchant. You can disenchant people's lands.
Yep, that's pretty good.
Oh, hold on. This set's kind of cool. All right, some big stuff in this pack. We've got a Fortified Beachhead, the Soldier Land. Don't care. There's an Iron Claw Crusher, a green prototype. It's the one that it's a 2/5. When it attacks, target creature gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is its power. There's a Spotter Thopter, 8 mana 4/5. ETB Scry X, where X is its power, and you can prototype it as a 2/3 in blue. And then there's a Hulking Metamorph. Not gonna lie, I kind of want to take this. When it enters the battlefield, it enters as a copy of an artifact or creature you control, except it has the power and toughness of Hulking Metamorph, It's a 9 mana 7/7, and you can prototype it for 2 blue. I mean, you can just
I don't
reanimate
think
this.
it makes the deck though. Like we have other reanimator targets. I guess you could still just do it. Yeah, I don't
Oops,
know.
looks like I
Double
took it.
Gigamole, I guess it's fine. Wow, we just got past another mythic.
It's a Blade Coil Serpent, and this is I saw Reed Duke play with this one. Even in a just straight up green-black deck, this card was nuts. Just X6 for a 5/4. When ETBs, for each blue spent to cast it, draw a card. For each black spent to cast it, each opponent discards a card. For each red, it gets 1/0 trample and haste. I'm just gonna. Who cares, dude? I'm just gonna take it.
It's a mythic. It's a first draft. It's reanimatable.
No, actually, it doesn't. It doesn't work really well with reanimation.
How not? Oh yeah, I guess you need to actually spend mana to cast it. Yeah.
And now here we get a safe pick of an Overwhelming Remorse. Look, this deck is gonna work. There is a Junkyard Genius, but we're a little bit off of red, even with the Blade Coil Serpent. There's another involuntary cooldown. There's a Calamity's Wake, which is just not a playable card. But we're going to take the other Overwhelming Remorse and just be happy with a solid
What's
removal
our creature
suite.
count?
Right now we've got 15 creatures, 13 non-creatures. So looking at our next pack, there's a Clay Revenant. There's a Flow of Knowledge, that weird island card. A Zephyr Sentinel. I know you're a fan of that one.
Zephyr Sentinel's great. I still think we're like really far from blue though.
I think we're actually a lot closer than it looks.
Oh,
I think
maybe we are.
Yeah,
I thought we had a lot more white cards. We may splash white for the platoon dispenser, but I actually think you're right. Yeah,
I think this is going to end up being a blue-black deck. Let's take the Zephyr Sentinel just as a solid blue 2-drop.
Yeah, our 4-drop slot is looking pretty weak right now. We've just got the 2 Gigamoles there. I'd like to shore that up in terms of curve count. So I'm going to be looking out for 4-drops here.
Can I? Well, there's a JM Daytome, but you can activate it on turn 4. There's a Gixian Skull Flare. There's a Koilos Rock, Air Marshal, another Energy Refractor.
I think I'm between the Skull Flare and the Koilos Rock.
Yeah, I think we're going to be able to get there on the graveyard. Stuff is just going to naturally die as well.
Skull Flare seems pretty good.
Yeah, I think we could try out the Skull Flare. Oh, okay. We got an Evangel of Synthesis. I guess blue-black was where we were supposed to be all along.
The thing is, I don't think we gave up any good blue picks for the white cards we took, so I'm not actually like too unhappy with how this draft has turned out. I just think like we've been seeing pretty mediocre cards overall. Wow, a second Evangel of Synthesis? Okay, yeah,
all right.
We're definitely supposed to be blue-black.
Oh, there is also a Disfigure in this pack. Our removal suite is pretty good.
Yeah, I was about to say, we've got decent removal.
Yeah, I think our 2-drop slot honestly needs the work more than a removal slot. Having double Evangel of Synthesis, I mean, they obviously work really well with each other. There's a Liquid Metal Cooling. I'm going to do that before this format ends. There's also a Power Stone Fracture, which that's probably the pick here. There's an Urza's Rebuff, but I don't know. I think I'd like just one more removal spell. It works pretty well with sack stuff.
Yeah, and we're not holding up mana on turn 3.
No, we're definitely tapping out given the vast number of 3-drops we have. Getting down to the dredges, we'll take another Skull Flare. Probably won't need it, but I'm going to put the white cards in the sideboard. So there's a Desynchronize, a Latinum Adept. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a 1/1 counter on it. Oh, there's a Goring Warplow. This card seems sick. There's another Moment of Defiance, but the Warplow, it's either a 2-mana 1/1 Death Touch or a 6-mana 5/4 Death Touch, and it pairs well with Reanimation. Definitely taking the Warplow here.
Yeah. So this is weird. We're kind of in the dredges of the pack, so there's not a whole lot to talk about at this point with the cards, but the deck has kind of felt weird because a lot of these black cards are slanted towards the mana value 3 or less thing, and we're not really. We do have a ton of 3-drops and we've got a lot of 2-drops. So like in terms of having cards to get with them, yeah, we can do that, but all the power in the deck is at the top end.
You know, I think we've actually pretty much taken out all of our mana value 3 or less stuff. At this point, it really is more just the draw 2. And I think these two Evangels kind of wrapped our Vector up. It really tightened it up at the end there, because now we have the Evangels of Synthesis to loot. So we can draw a card, discard a card. We can,
which makes those top end cards much better, because like I mentioned earlier, the big hole I saw with this deck was that you draw one of your 9/9 for 9s and you can't do anything with it because we're never going to have 9 mana.
Except now you pitch your Goring Warplow and reanimate it on turn 5. Or you pitch your Combat Thresher, which I actually do think we might end up leaving in the deck.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna splash for the Platoon Dispenser. It's not really the best home for this card, right? The Platoon Dispenser really just wants to start pumping out tokens in the late game and kind of go to town. But it's still a pretty solid card. I don't think we're gonna hurt ourselves too much by playing it. So I think if you're playing Platoon Dispenser, probably we want 3 or 4 white sources. If we're it depends how we're playing if we're going to play both the energy refractors as well. That plays into it.
Yeah. So thinking again about Combat Thresher, I think it's actually a cut because a good amount of the strength of that card is in the 3 mana mode, right? Where you just play it on turn 3, you get your card back, and then you get a 1/1 double strike. If this is just a clunky top end thing, we have the Metamorph, we have the Warplow, and honestly, the Temporal Anchor is a big top end too. And we even have the Platoon Dispenser as like a mana sink. And we have some pretty expensive cards, although the Remorses will get cheaper. I think that's just going to end up being a cut, and it helps make our mana a little safer too. I do think the Platoon Dispenser stays in. I don't think we necessarily ever have to try to unearth it.
Yeah, so you really only need 1 or 2 white sources.
I think even with 0 ways to make white mana, this would still make the deck. Because a 5 mana 4/6 end step, if you control 2 or more other creatures, that's not hard. Draw a card. Like that's really good.
Yeah, you're right. I totally agree. I don't even know that we need to splash the white. And especially if we are going to play the energy refractors, we could use it if we need to. I don't know that it's correct to play them, but I'm just saying that is a way to get white sources without playing planes.
I think I'm going to cut the Power Stone Fracture. You can sack energy refractors for that. I guess you could sack the Reconstructed Thopter. We don't have a ton of sacrifice fodder. I mean, a lot of our stuff is actually pretty high value, and we care about it sticking on the battlefield.
Yeah, most of our sack fodder would actually come out of the Platoon Dispenser, but by that point in the game, it's like, do we care about sacking our 1/1s to a Power Stone Fracture? Maybe, maybe not. But it does seem like one of the weaker cards in the deck.
I hate to do this to you, but I think we got to cut Zephyr Sentinel. It's just so far off vector. It's a 2 mana 2.
I thought about that when you grabbed it, to be honest. It's just super off vector.
There's a single other soldier in the deck, and it's the Battlefield Butcher, which has a tap ability, so you don't really want to be bouncing at the hand anyway. At this point, I mean, our 3-drop slot looks a little heavy. We probably can go down a Skull Flare. That brings us to 14 creatures, so we probably don't want to cut any more. And we do have some top-end ones with good flexibility.
To be honest.
No?
I don't think so. It draws us a card, sure, but I don't know. I don't really want to be spending my extra mana to color fix in a deck that doesn't really need the color fixing.
That's fair. I did pick up a Weakstone Subjugation late in one of the packs, in pack 3, I think, which, I mean, if you remember, was it Stasis Bubble or like Bubble Snare? Whatever that thing was called. This is it's a functional Bubble Snare. Enchants an artifact or a creature. It doesn't untap during its next untap step, or during its any untap step, and you can pay an additional 3 to tap it when you cast it. So I see this as a really good removal spell for something like the I don't know, a giant unearthed creature, something like the Platoon Dispenser. Well, maybe not exactly Platoon Dispenser, but like some massive stat beast that you're afraid of, like a 10 mana 10/10. This answers that for 1 mana.
Yeah.
So we actually do have a lot of reanimation effects between like the Gurgling Anointer to get back the small stuff, the No One Left Behind. We have 2 copies of that to get back our big stuff. I mean, this is just a blue-black Reanimator deck, but it makes me think we might not need Emergency Weld.
Yeah.
And this is such a good rate, though.
The Emergency Weld does make the Power Stone Fracture a little bit better. Plus, all of our other reanimation stuff also makes Power Stone Fracture a bit better, but
this is going to be a tough last 4 cuts, isn't it?
Yeah, man, we've got to cut 4 cards. I really think that the energy refractors are out. I don't think that they add enough to this deck.
I feel like we want 1 on the off chance of Platoon Dispenser, but if we're cutting 1, then maybe the Power Stone Fracture goes as well. We have the Disfigure for the cheap early removal, and then we have the Overwhelming Remorses, which will be cheapened by the Gigamoles and pitching stuff to the Evangels.
Yeah.
And then there's some things that we'll just trade off anyway.
The No One Left Behinds get cheaper too, don't they?
Oh yeah, they also can be cheaper if they target something small. We do have stuff that they can target reasonably. So this is like a 2 mana bring back Hercule, or oh my god, 2 mana bring back the Anointer, and then start like drawing more cards again. Oh, that's the other thing. The Energy Refractor is pretty good with the Anointer, but then again, so is the Evangel, and it's funny. We have 2 bomb blue rares that both are card advantage, but neither draws you cards.
Yeah. Love that.
So,
what does the archaeologist do again? It's a 2-drop, top tier 2-drops.
Oh, right. This was the one that it stocks a graveyard. 2 mana 0/3 ETB mill 3, and you can get a non-creature non-land. I feel like pretty often this is going to be a 2 mana 0/3 draw a card, right?
Probably not. We don't really have any non-creature non-lands in the deck. I guess there are a handful of non-creatures.
Yeah, I mean, there's all the No One Left Behinds. There's the Temporal Anchor. Any removal spell. I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah. How many of those do we have? Non-creatures?
Right now we have 5 instants, 3 sorceries, and
so the artifacts are tough because
yeah, there's an aura.
They don't actually work, but so it looks like 9.
Yeah.
Off of a mill 3. I don't know.
It's also self-mill.
Well, yeah, self-mill is important, yeah. I'm skeptical about how often we're actually going to hit with that. But if we miss, it's a 2 mana 1/4, which isn't the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. I mean, this is a late game vector. This is not aggressive, despite having 2 mana 2/3s. I mean, I guess you could have aggressive starts, but I mean, this is a deck like look at this top end. Goring Warplow is really a 2-drop. So I guess that makes me feel a little better if we wanted to cut the Archaeologist. But then we go down to 13 creatures. And if we have this many reanimation effects, I don't think we should go lower. But then again, I could see a hand where we get stuck with like all 3 reanimation effects and no creatures. So that's probably a reason to cut the Emergency Weld. Because, I mean, really, No One Left Behind does something very similar to Emergency Weld. Especially when you're casting it on little things. So let's cut the Emergency Weld. That brings us down to 41 cards. Now, can we address our top end? We have a Blade Coil Serpent.
Yeah.
Hulking
we
Metamorph.
do. That is, Blade Coil Serpent is probably the least on vector card we have in terms of our top end, just because you have to cast it. And we do care quite a bit about the reanimation stuff. That said, it's still just a phenomenal card, and I don't think we're cutting it by any stretch. But
no, not at all. This card looks nuts. Just raw card advantage.
Yeah, even as a 6 mana 5/4, it's just like fine. You know, if we have no other reanimation targets, then like great. But at worst, this is like in this deck, it's probably like a 6 mana 5/4 opponent discards a card at worst, and it's often going to be better than that. So
it's often going to be much better than that. Just you wait until I filter a bunch of red mana from my Energy Refractor, and I'd go full all 3 modes on this thing.
So expensive though. We don't have any way to generate extra mana is the problem. Like we have no Power Stone generation.
That's true.
No rocks. The Energy Refractor is not a rock. I don't think we're ever going to have the mana to put into the Refractor. We might. I just don't think I think the Refractor is probably the worst card in the deck.
Yeah. And I hate to say it, but we need one more cut. I just feel like it's such a smoothing card, you know? Like it's going to be there when we need it. It also
we're drawing so many cards though.
Yeah, but it does literally draw a card, whereas a lot of the stuff we have doesn't. I mean, you know what? I think it's just Scatter Ray. Like when are we leaving up that 2 mana?
Late game would be when we leave it up to counter like.
Late game, we're drawing cards off like Hercule and Temporal Anchor. Like we're tapping out the entire game.
Sure. I guess that's true. What I'm thinking is that like once your opponent has a bunch of Power Stones out, like you might want to take turn 4 off to counter their 9-drop, or later when you've already played your 8-drop, you might want to counter their 10-drop or something. I don't see that being used very early on, but
yeah. This is like a metagame call that I just don't think we know yet. And also, this is best of 3. It can be sideboarded in. I think
true. I totally forgot this was best of 3.
Yeah. And that makes me feel a bit better about the setup, because like then we could sideboard in like a Gixian Skullflare against aggro, or Scatter Ray against like blue-green ramp. So I think this is probably the deck. I almost, is it nuts to go eight? Is it nuts to go 9 islands, 8 swamps? Because we have triple blue for Temporal Anchor. I feel like that wants the 8.
We are drawing a lot of extra cards though.
With Hercule, which also costs 2 blue.
And the Evangel, but yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I think this is the deck. So for the listener, just to take a quick look here, at the 1-drop slot, we have Weakstone Subjugation, the kill spell, along with Disfigure. So some good early interaction. We have a Philology Archaeologist, the 2-mana self-mill one, 2 copies of Evangel of Synthesis, which honestly may have saved this draft, despite having us both kind of crapped on this card in our set review. We have an Energy Refractor, which pairs very well with the Evangels. A Goring Warplow, which is, functionally a 2-mana 1/1 Death Touch, but we'll see it again on the curve as a 6-drop. 3 drops. We have Hercule Master Wizard, the blue card advantage rare. Battlefield Butcher, Gixian Skullflayer, Gurgly Anointer, the reanimation thing. Moment of Defiance, the combat trick with lifelink and 2/1. Reconstructed Thopter, which is a little off vector, but I think it's just a good enough card that it stays. 4 drops, we have Ravenous Gigamole, just 2 of them, to fuel our self-mill stuff. And then hopefully we get to curve out where we go maybe loot something away with the Evangel, self-mill a bit with the Gigamole, and then turn 5, we can cast one of our 2 copies of No One Left Behind. We also have Overwhelming Remorse, which, this will cost 1 mana in our deck, a good amount of the time.
Yep.
And we can't forget our off-color, quote-unquote, mythic Platoon Dispenser. This is a late-game deck. It's going to want to have creatures established on the battlefield. The Evangels were just going to sit around, and the Gixian Skullflayer is just going to sit around getting counters. Platoon Dispenser is going to be a must-answer threat. And if they don't, we're just going to start making a bunch of tokens with it, I guess. Maybe filtering through the Refractor. I don't think it's worth including a Plains, because we have some pretty intense color requirements as is. And then maybe every once in a while we'll just draw the Energy Refractor. But maybe if we had an Evolving Wilds, we would include a Plains here, but I don't think it's worth messing up our mana base. Given that at the 6-drop slot, we have the Temporal Anchor, which is our pack 1 pick 1. The 3 blue card advantage legendary artifact. And then we have Hulking Metamorph at the 9-drop slot. This is going to be a sweet one to reanimate. To loot away, bring back, copy the Platoon Dispenser as a 7/7 instead. Come on. Or even something stupid like an Evangel of Synthesis. But then when we draw our second card, it can get Menace as a 7/7. That's really good.
Yeah, we could also, I see a world where we get back the Thopter and just kill them in the air with it.
Yeah, that's true. And then last but not least, Blade Coil Serpent. So, all right. It's our first draft. We have 2, what I have to assume, bomb mythics. We have a handful of what I have to assume are solid rares. And we have a few on-vector signpost cards, too. I don't know, dude. Maybe we're a little hard on blue-black. This is a reanimator.
Well, so here's the thing. That's exactly right. The vector we focused on in the format breakdown was the draw 2 theme, and that didn't seem great.
No,
this is exactly what we were looking for when we did the format breakdown. We were talking about how some of these decks seem to have, or I should say some of these color pairs seem to have vectors that play really nicely outside of what the main signpost is kind of telling us it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And in this deck, the draw 2 thing is icing on the cake. It's value added on top of the real value in the deck, which is reanimation. And we kind of looked at Black Red as being the reanimator deck, or the sack deck anyway. This looks pretty sweet. I'm for it. I'm hoping there are a few different color pairs that have these weird alternative vectors, and maybe it'll turn out that this actually is just the main vector for this archetype, and we were wrong about what the signpost was pointing toward. But
and that's possible. Maybe we're just off, but I don't know. I think these are going to be some pretty sweet games. We have some sick mythics, good cards, solid removal spells. We'll toss this one in Discord and ask the folks how we did. And then I think we're going to play out these games, probably put them on our Patreon, yeah?
Yeah, so if you're a patron, look forward to catching the actual gameplay for this deck.
And of course, for everyone, if you want to catch the actual draft itself, I just stopped that recording, so you'll be able to find that yourself and watch along with us. So something new for our live draft show. I thought it'd be funny to take a look back at our old live draft from Dominaria United. Now, we're going to look back at this one for Brothers War, and it's going to be hard to say that wasn't sweet. But for DMU, looking back at our live draft, which was again like a first draft, it's pretty funny. It was blue-green ramp, which wasn't exactly a good vector or a good deck in Dominaria United. But there are some good cards in this deck, and I see why it worked.
So what was the record on this deck?
The record shows is 0-0 on 17 lands, so I guess it was never recorded. But anyway, this deck was pretty good. It had 2 Phyrexian Espionages, it had a Tolarian Geyser, and it had some walls to hide behind in the early game, like Floriferous Vine Walls, 2 copies of them, the Academy Walls, and a Coral Colony. So it's kind of like a walls payoff. I feel like you finished at least 5-3 or 6-3 with this deck, if I remember right. I don't know. The patrons and listeners with better memory than us, they can remind us. But this had, I feel like you sent me a screenshot at one point of like a good wall kill with this. I mean, this also had some top end stuff. It had the Frostfist Strider, Territorial Morrow, Bortog Bone Rattle, and even a Tolarian Terror. Like, this deck can definitely win games. It's also just kind of funny that this is the only time I've ever seen a deck that looks like this.
Yeah, like, right? It just wasn't really a deck people played.
Yeah, no. Even though it looks fine, it is a bit skewed between several vectors where, I mean, it's not doing the full like domain thing. It has a bunch of solid domain cards. I mean, the Morrow could have been a 10-10 in this deck. I mean, you had like 5 dual lands here. So, and actually, funny enough, we picked up on what became a rule pretty quickly in the format, which is that the non-green duels were especially valuable because it was the green cards that let you go fetch the other stuff. So you could always add more forests, but having stuff like Geothermal Bog and Idyllic Beachfront was really key to getting your domain stuff to work properly. I mean, this deck was just solid. It had an Iconoclast. It had the Llanowar Loam Speaker, which I feel like might have been the pack one pick one, if I remember right. Like an Essence Scatter and a Terrace Under. Funny deck to have existed, but not one that I would voluntarily play in DMU.
Yeah, actually, talking over it, I do recall playing it a little bit more. We definitely got the Morrow to 10-10 more than once, and I believe the record was 5-3. But I definitely posted about it in the Discord, so if you're interested in actually seeing my thoughts in more real time, scroll back through probably the DMU channel.
This honestly looks like a 5-3 deck.
Well, that about does it for us this week. Thank you so much for listening. Definitely check out the draft itself. We'll have the 17 lands link posted as well in the show notes, so check that out. Jump in the Discord if you're not already in there. Check that out and post your trophy decks. We'll also throw up the record for this deck that we just drafted as well. Again, if you're a patron, you'll have access to the gameplay. And if you'd like to support the show and become a patron, you can do so at patreon.com/draftchaffpod. And if you'd like to find us outside of the Discord, you can find us on Twitter at DraftChaffPod. Thanks, folks, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, so it's actually time to call back to something that, well, I referenced in the pre-show a little bit. We've been talking a little bit about, I don't know, I guess, what do you want to call it? The decline of civilization as we know it, or whatever's going on out there. It's hard to say. It's something new every day, isn't it? But there are still bright glimmers of hope. For example, the Onion has been on full throttle, just foot on the gas. They have not slowed down at all. So
they have so much fodder. There's so much potential with the material they have to work with.
And yet, pretty soon, even now, their best headlines are indistinguishable from reality. So today they posted a pretty good kind of like clickable article where it reads, what Elon Musk told Twitter employees during his first company meeting. And I'm just going to read off a few of these because they're pretty funny. So his opener, let's just remember that everybody likes me and I'm very cool.
All right.
Second, Okay, does anybody have $45 billion? The top priority right now is creating a task force to figure out who is being mean to me. Which honestly is exactly what's been happening on Twitter. Next, quote, I just found out about GIFs. They're like pictures, but they move. Do people know about this?
Oh, Elon.
And if anybody from the FTC comes around, we're a bakery. Followed by, he then held up a single cheese Danish to reinforce the point.
Oh, that's great. Dude, speaking of the Onion. Oh, go ahead.
This next one. We're planning to change the office layout to something that reflects the successful apartheid model I grew up with.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, there's no coming back from that. Oh my God. The caption is, allowing employees to work from home reportedly made it far more difficult to separate them by race.
Oh no.
Jeez. I mean, I've heard a lot of the stuff about like his factory conditions and like terrible slang and slurs used against people of color, and not very good. But what was it you're gonna say?
I just I don't know if you've heard about this, but there was an article I came across and some folks at work were talking about, and pretty much everybody who came across the article had to do a triple take to realize it wasn't an Onion article. But it basically, the guy who helped invent the Oculus Rift built a new VR headset that actually kills people when you die in the game. It's based off of Sword Art Online, and he like literally made a device that does this, and the headline read just like that. And it was a Business Insider article, not an Onion article.
I don't believe that that's not parody. Like, what do you mean you built a headset that kills you?
Yep. And then I was making jokes about like, well, that must have been, like the like you see at the end of movies, animals were harmed in the making of this device.
How do you? What's the?
Yeah, testing that must have been a nightmare.